Welcome to the Record Machine Show, a podcast featuring interviews from indie and renowned artists from all genres of music. Now, here's your host, James Michael Hollenstein.
Welcome to the Record Machine Show. I'm your host, James Michael Hollenstein. And today we're featuring a Texas music artist whose career has taken him from early Texas radio success to stages around the world. My guest today is Randy C. Moore, a singer-songwriter originally from Humboldt, Texas, who now resides in Lufkin, Texas. Randy has spent decades building a career rooted in authentic storytelling and traditional country music, and he's also a proud member of the European Country Music Hall of Fame. His musical journey began early. At just age 15 years old, Randy was already making his own records, and with the help of Houston radio personality Arch Yancey of KNUZ, his early singles were receiving significant Texas radio airplay. Around the same time, he became a regular performer at the legendary Gilley's Club in Pasadena, Texas, one of the most famous country music venues in the country. By the time he graduated high school, Randy already appeared as a guest star on WSM's Grand Ole Opry, a stage he would return to many times throughout his career. Randy later attended Belmont University in Nashville, where he studied modern recording and professional songwriting, while also opening shows on the road for artists like Hank Williams Jr., David Allan Coe, Amy Grant, Vince Gill, and LeAnn Rimes. His songwriting career led him to collaborate with legendary artists including Randy Owen of Alabama and rockabilly pioneer Carl Perkins, with who he co-wrote the song Big Bertha. That song was later recorded by Ronnie Milsap and Vince Gill. Throughout his career, Randy has performed around the world, from Shanghai, China to Monaco, touring through the Middle East, Europe, and across the United States. He's also appeared on numerous radio programs, including Shooter FM's Sunday Morning Coming Down, Texas Red Hot Radio with Brett Watts, and Hank's Jam on 92.1 Hank FM. In addition to his music career, Randy was a featured artist at the Alliance of Neighbors 9/11 benefit concert in Red Bank, New Jersey, performing alongside artists like Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi, Phoebe Snow, and Joe Eli, with the backing band composed of members of Elvis Presley's Rhythm Section. He continues to release new music, including his latest single, Forget Me Not, a powerful song that tells a story about life's journey and a prayer for redemption. So let's start things the way we always do here on the show. Let's put the needle to the record and listen to Forget Me Not by Randy C. Moore.
Make it home, will you let me stay? Though I've forsaken you and lost my way, like a thief on the cross, forget me not. I was a child with a home in the sunlight, barefoot and walking in fields of gold, until one night, one callous evening, I started down that long dark road. Forget me not, oh Lord, I pray. If I make it home, will you let me stay? Though I've forsaken you and lost my way, like a thief on the cross, forget me not. Chilly autumn winds soul where it never stays. My body's weary, and when I lay it down, in dreams I hear my mother say, forget me not, oh Lord, I pray. If I make it home, will you let me stay? Though I've forsaken you and lost my way, like a thief on the cross, forget me not, with a soul that's lost, forget me not, oh Lord my God, forget me not.
You just heard Forget Me Not by Randy Seymour, and I got Randy on the line for a chat. Randy, welcome to the Record Machine Show. Let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up and where are you based these days?
Well, my beginnings were in a little place called Humble, Texas, but there is an H in front of it. It's Humble, but if you're from there, you don't pronounce the H. I've started playing music. I was actually an artist, painting and all that kind of stuff. I never really wanted to be a musician, but I found out that girls like guitar players better than they like people that paint pictures. So I stayed on the guitar for a while, and then I started writing songs, and the songs I was writing were more like folk and kind of country stuff. So my dad had a friend who was a drive time disc jockey that he went to high school with years and years ago in Memphis. His name was Archie Yancey, and he was pretty prominent in the Houston area. So that's where Humble is. It's north of Houston, Texas. So we got together, and he was liking what I was doing, so he helped me, get into the studio, make some recording stuff. I'm 15 years old doing all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he said, I've got a regular show that I do out at Gilley's nightclub every Thursday night. I'd like for you to come out and be part of it. And I was like, okay, that's great. So for a couple of years, every Thursday night, me and my parents went out to Gilley's nightclub in Pasadena, Texas, and I would get up and sing a few of my songs with a band, and I got a lot of experience that way. And so I guess I got sort of hooked into it at that point. And then I auditioned for a thing called Opryland USA up in Nashville, and I got hired. And so I moved to Nashville and started getting in the music industry sort of in earnest. And I'm glad I made the move, because there's so many things that I learned and so many things I got to do in Nashville that it's just I don't know, unless somebody goes to a place like that, you really can't describe all the different things that you get to do, because it's such a creative place. Got great studios, great musicians, and great songwriters and artists. So around all that kind of stuff, you can kind of learn things pretty quickly, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I read in your bio that you started making your own records by the age of 15. Is that when you realized that you wanted to pursue music seriously?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I was still going to go to art school and all that kind of stuff. But once I got to Nashville and spent a summer there and was around like a bunch of serious musicians and artists and things like that, and I'm serious. When I say serious, I don't mean they were like stuffy. They were like it was really a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And they were so good. And I thought, this really, really gets me excited. So that's when I kind of decided, I think I need to do this for a while and see what happens.
Very cool. Who were some of the artists that influenced you most while you were developing your sound and songwriting style?
Well, when I was 12 years old, we went to go see an Elvis Presley concert that was in Houston, Texas. So I really thought that was really, really something like it was a spectacle is what it was. But I'd already heard Elvis Presley music when I was a kid, and I liked it okay. But then when I saw him live, I kind of understood the whole deal, how the energy and the excitement and how soulful he was and everything. Because man, he could just sing, man, and he was so good. Mm-hmm. So Elvis Presley was a big influence. A lot of my influences were from my dad's record collection. I'm talking about people like Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Tom T. Hall, and Charlie Rich, people like that. And then my brother, I was getting musical influences from him because he had Doobie Brothers, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Head East,
Nice.
like that, so there was a whole mixture of English rock and American rock mixed with classic country coming out of Nashville and coming out of Bakersfield that just kind of fused. And the more that I heard, I guess the more that it just kind of got into my DNA that this was great. And of course, when you get on stage, you start doing this kind of stuff, you immediately get what we would call instant gratification. And at that point, like I said, I was hooked after doing the shows at Gillies and stuff. So, I had influences like that were, I don't know, I would say rockabilly and folk and country were probably my biggest influences. I mean, I loved John Denver and all the folk artists, the songwriters of that era when I grew up. People like Jim Croce, Harry Chapin, Gordon Lightfoot, those kind of just loved all that music. So, and all that kind of stuff still sort of shows up in some of my records.
Yeah, you definitely can tell. Now, you mentioned Gillies twice already so far. What were those early days like playing at Gillies? What was that Texas music scene like for you?
Well, it's funny because they kind of make a big deal out of the whole thing, like it was some crazy, wild thing. But really, all it really was it was guys who were playing, who were really good musicians and singers who were playing country music that people who worked for a living wanted to come here. And Gillies was definitely we work for a living type of place. It was all it was all blue collar stuff. There was no, it wasn't fancy. There was no cover charge. You get it free, massive. It was actually fairly relaxing, especially on Thursday night. I'm pretty sure it was probably a little wilder on the weekends, but it didn't feel like, it all felt kind of natural. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, well, this is a thing, and nobody thought of it that way, because at that point, Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson had released the Outlaws album with Jesse Coulter and Tom Paul Glaser and the Glaser Brothers, and that thing was really burning up the charts. And so country music was changing, and it was changing for a younger audience. My brother came back from college, and he'd been listening to Led Zeppelin in high school. He came back from college with 2 Willie Nelson records, and that's all he was listening to for the next 4 years.
Wow.
Was nothing but Texas-based music. So that's how much the landscape changed musically here in Texas, because everybody around here that I was around was suddenly being influenced by this infusion of sort of more real, down and dirty kind of records. Because the records in Nashville at that point, some of them were really slick, and they were trying to come to the whole Texas music scene too. In a way, they had signed people like Gary Stewart and Dotsy and people like that, and so they were starting to lean that way too. Because let's face it, the record industries, they follow the money, and so that's what was happening. And it was great because it appealed to a younger audience, obviously, and I was that younger audience. So I got to hear a lot of great songs and got to learn a lot from a lot of great records. And like I said, when I moved to Nashville, I got to meet some of these people and really be influenced firsthand.
So Gillies was a great place to cut your teeth, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, I met artists there. I sat down one night. I had made a record of a song called You Are My Sunshine. It was a very old record that recorded by a guy named Jimmy Davis. Jimmy Davis was a very famous guy from Louisiana who became the governor. He was also a music artist. So one of the guests on Arch's show that night at Gillies was not just me, but there was a guy named Floyd Tillman. He got up and sang his songs. And Floyd was a very famous old songwriter, very much like Willie Nelson, but he was an older guy. He was older than Willie. So we sat around and drank beer with Floyd Tillman, and he said, you know that song you sang tonight, You Are My Sunshine? I said, yes, sir. He goes, you know who wrote that? I said, yes, sir, Jimmy Davis. He goes, nope. He said, you're looking at the guy that wrote it.
Huh.
I said, you did? He goes, yeah. He said, I sold it to Jimmy Davis for $50 because I needed to make money.
Wow. Cool story.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Nashville a little bit. You attended Belmont University in Nashville to study modern recording and professional songwriting. How did that experience help shape you as an artist?
Well, I had been in the studio a couple of times already making my own records, but I'd never actually been behind the glass and asked to sort of help produce a record. So that's what they do when you go to school over there. You learn how to not just be around the recording studio. You actually learn how to use it as a tool. I'm sure today it's all modernized and everybody's using computers and stuff, but back then it was all analog tape and stuff like that. Big fat 2-inch recording tape. Everything else that goes with it, Belmont was the first school to have what's called a music business program. So being there was really a great experience because most of the people who were instructors were either in the music business or had been in the music business. So it was almost a way for a young person. Well, actually, it was a way for a young person to network into the music business without knocking on doors on Music Row and sending cassette tapes by mail to publishers and things like that. You could actually meet people. You could actually hear from them. You could actually see what they do. You could actually hear them tell you, well, this is how this song came about. Because when you're 17 and 18 years old, a lot of times, I don't know how many people that young have the wherewithal to know where creativity starts, where songs come from, how to do them, how to craft them, how to turn them out into something that's palatable and something that is going to appeal to an audience. That's what Belmont really was teaching. They were teaching how to be in the music business, not how to be successful, but all the finer points of that. And then, once you get to that point, then it's like you're on your own. I didn't finish the school. I went there for a couple of years, and I kept looking around one morning. I thought, if I ever actually do anything in this business, I'm going to have to hire some of these people in the room. So, I kept getting gigs. So it was like I would show up late for class and stuff. And I said, I just can't do this. I'm too busy making money.
But you did learn a few things along the way, right?
Yes. I mean, okay, I'll just give you an example. My recording industry teacher was a guy named Scott Hendricks. If anybody's familiar with records in Nashville, Scott Hendricks is the guy who produced Faith Hill. He worked with Tim McGraw. Scott he produced a lot of big records. He worked with Tim Dubois over at BMG Arista for a long, long time. So, so those are the kind of people that you're around. I mean, they were like teachers and everyday people, but these were the ones who were going out and eventually making differences in the music industry.
Nice. Let's talk about your latest single, Forget Me Not. The song has been described as a prayer for redemption and reflects on life's journey. What inspired you to write this one?
Well, usually most of the songs that I write are kind of inspired by absolutely nothing, some sort of boredom, but there's always a story that's connected to a particular idea or a particular feeling or thought. This song came about haphazardly enough. I was trying to come up with a song, which I should never try to come up with a song, but that's what I was doing. I was doing a gospel show in Carthage, Texas at the Texas Country Music Hall of Fame. And so I had a few gospel songs that I could do because I was the host, and I needed one more, I thought. So I came up with this idea, and it was somewhat the idea of Forget Me Not, but it actually wasn't even that title, but it had something to do with that. But I was getting nowhere with it. I mean, as I always say, I couldn't get the horse to get out of the barn. So I left it in there because I thought, well, it still feels like a good idea. I'm just not finding it. So about a year or so ago, I was talking with my wife at the breakfast table, and she was telling me some stuff about what it was like when she was growing up and the things that happened to her later on, and how, life sort of unfolded in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, this is a great narrative. This is a real story. And I think a lot of people live this story. They live a story where, life's taking them in one direction. And one of the things that's most important to them is they don't want to be forgotten when it's all over with. They want to feel like that they're remembered, and that the Lord in heaven and your Lord and Savior is going to say, it's okay, you can come home. There's a place for you. So in that moment, the next morning, actually, I sat down and the song just started to write itself. So I'm real proud of the record and the sound. I love the sound of the record. Me and a guy named Barry Sanders, who's a really good record producer in Nashville, we worked on this record together, and I'm so happy with it right now.
Awesome. One of the highlights of your songwriting career is the song Big Bertha, which you co-wrote with rockabilly legend Carl Perkins. How did that collaboration come together?
Well, I got to see Carl at the first time down at his house. I was introduced to him by a friend of mine that I was writing songs with. Her name is Dottie Moore. She's not related to me, but we call ourselves brother and sister by a different mother. Dottie was writing songs with Carl, and she said, would you want to ever meet Carl Perkins and maybe write songs with him? I said, Dottie, not how fast can I walk, but how fast can I run to get to this? So she set me up, and I met him, and immediately we hit it off as far as I completely got him because he was a lot like my dad. And so we wrote a song that day with his daughter. It was me and Debbie, his daughter, and Carl. And the name of the song is called Blood Brothers. And it came off so well that Carl was really intrigued and delighted. So I got to write some more songs with him. And the Big Bertha song came about because Carl had gone out to play golf one day, and he had a Big Bertha golf club. A lot of people there in Myrtle Beach would know what that is. So somebody stole it.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, it made him mad. So he went home, he fussed and fumed. And so his daughter said, well, Daddy, why don't you just write a song about it? So he started writing a song, and they both kind of got together with me, and they said, listen, we need to finish this. Can you help us? And I said, sure. So I finished it, and we fully intended for it to be a Carl Perkins record, but Carl ran into health problems at that point, and then he passed away not too long after that. So the song was just kind of sitting around, and I had a band I was playing with up in Tennessee. We were playing house gigs and then doing different stuff. So for my birthday, I decided I would give myself a birthday present and go make a record at Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee, which you can do, by the way, after hours. It's a full recording studio. So I went down there with my band, and we recorded a bunch of songs, and we recorded Big Bertha. So my record of Big Bertha that you get to hear is one that I recorded back in 2003 at Sun Records in Memphis. Back in 2021, I got a call from Black River Entertainment in Nashville, and they wanted to record Big Bertha on Ronnie Millsap and Vince Gill, which I was glad for them to do. So they released a record of that late 2021. So it's a great record, by the way. I really love the way their record sounds.
So what was it like hearing artists of that caliber bring that song to life again?
Like an out-of-body experience.
That's pretty cool.
Did I really work on that? Wow.
That's very cool. Now, did you get to meet with them and stuff too, or?
I've met Vince earlier on. I've met Ronnie earlier on, and they didn't really. I don't know that they made the connection because, I met Vince and played a show with him back in I don't know, must have been 1996 or 95, maybe sometime around then. Maybe after 2000, I don't even know. And Ronnie Millsap, I met him. Mm-hmm. I was at Opryland Park, so that was in 1978 that I met him and shook his hand and everything. But no, I never really actually sat down and worked with those guys, but they certainly worked it out for that song, which I was happy for.
Awesome story. Your career is included guest appearances on WSM's Grand Ole Opry, international tours, and collaborations with legendary artists. When you look back on your journey so far, what moments stand out for you most?
I did a show in New Jersey right after 9/11. It was in October of 2001. It was the very first show that was post 9/11 attacks. It was supposed to be a Sun Records tribute show because they were bringing me up there to do some Carl Perkins songs, and they had a host of Sun Records artists that they were going to do, and they were going to present an independent film. And then the money was going to be going to Harry Chapin's Why Hunger Foundation, which is the foundation that raises money for a lot of food banks. So it was all scheduled and everything, and all of a sudden the 9/11 attacks happened, and it was all completely changed because this is up in New Jersey that the show was going to be. Mm-hmm. So I got a call from the show producer. His name is Rick, and I said, well, is there still going to be a show? He said, there is, but he said, it's completely changed. I said, well, what's changed? He said, it's going to be a benefit now. It's going to be for all the people who live in this county who lost someone in the Twin Towers, and they have got to have something to support them until they can get on their feet. I said, well, who's on the show? He said, John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora, Bruce Springsteen, Phoebe Snow, Joe Ely, Joan Jett, the Smithereens.
Wow.
Felix Cavalier of the Rascals. He just kept going on and on. I said, are you sure you want me on this show? He goes, absolutely. He said, in fact, Bruce wants to play with you guys on the Sun Records tributes. And I said, okay, sounds good. So that show was probably the biggest highlight of what I've ever done, simply because it had nothing to do with being on stage with some, well-known artists. It had everything to do with taking music and lifting up people in their darkest hour, right, and giving them hope. And it definitely did that. After the show was over, the first night, I was in my room, and Gary Talent, who was the bass player and the band leader. Now, Gary's the guy who plays in the E Street Band. He came up to my room with Henry Gross, and he said, and he did this on his own. I didn't expect that. He came knocking on my door, and he said, I just wanted to come up and tell you, first of all, what a terrific job that you did tonight. But he said, I also wanted to tell you that this show that we did tonight, he said, I have played, arenas. I have played stadiums. He said, I've played around the world. He said, I've played for album. I've played for audiences of, 50 to 60 to 70,000 plus people. And he said, I have never played a show that was more spiritually, more artistically powered than tonight's show. He said it absolutely blew me away, the feeling that was established on the stage. And he said, you were part of it. And I was like, wow. So to me, that was a big deal because it had nothing to do, like I said, with, standing on stage and delivering a performance. It had everything to do with standing on stage and lifting up, an entire group of people who were basically desperate for some sort of light to be shown into their lives, at least for a few minutes, because it was dark up there. It was really, really rough, and people were struggling. So that would be the big one that I would say. I've told people often, I said, if I had died after doing that show, I would figure I did what I was supposed to do coming to Earth. I would say I'm finished,
Yeah, that was called the Alliance of Neighbors, the 9/11 benefit concert, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, besides that conversation you had with Gary, what was the atmosphere like backstage that night with so many incredible artists coming together for such an important cause? Did you guys talk with a lot of the people that were there that night and share different stories and experiences? Yeah,
they were. A lot of folks who were at the show were welcome to come backstage and mingle around. So, I'll be honest with you. I prayed with people. I took their hands and prayed with them and tried to, show them that, you know, there's going to be a tomorrow, there's going to be a better day, and that God really cared. I told two ladies who, it was a woman who had lost her brother, and the other lady, that was her husband. He was in the Twin Towers. His name was James Patrick Ladley. Mm-hmm. And I just told both of these ladies, I said, I want you to know that first and foremost, God loves you. So I want you to look out at the audience, at the crowd. I want you to look backstage. I want you to look at all the musicians. I want you to see this, because this is evidence that God loves you and that he wants the best for you, no matter how bad things may seem to be. So I suppose, in a way, you know, I did something there, but that's kind of the way the backstage was. It was very different from, you know, the normal, let's just keep everything businesslike and stuff. People from every, you know, part of that show had a different sort of approach on everything. Because let's face it, this was the first one that was being done, so nobody really knew how to act. Right. You know, we were like walking on eggshells and just trying to be, trying not to do the wrong thing, you know, which for some people who are big music artists, they're not used to that. You know, they're used to everything kind of being lined up. You know, they're going to go out and they're just going to like lay people out, and that's their job. Mm-hmm. They didn't know they didn't know what kind of reaction they were going to get.
Yeah, and you performed that night with members of Elvis Presley's band too, right? Yeah,
DJ Fontana was on drums. If anybody's familiar with Elvis's earlier career, DJ was the guy who played on all of those Ed Sullivan Show appearances, and most of his early records, that was DJ playing. And then the guy who played bass with him later on, from the late 1960s until Elvis's passing, was a guy named Jerry Sheff. So those two guys were up there. There was a Sun Records act up there. His name is Sonny Burgess. He had the rest of his band was up there. The Pacers, Max Weinberg joined in and played. They had two drum sets up there. So Max played drums as well as DJ. And then Bruce came out and he sang a song with everybody. So it was really something. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Can you believe that this September, it's going to be 25 years since that happened?
Yeah, I can believe it. But then when you look around, you just kind of go, how the world has changed and done some strange turns and things like that. So I still don't think any of the efforts and everything that happened back then was in vain. I know it profoundly changed many, many people. And that was probably the best part of it. Was it changed people. It gave people who were still standing a new perspective and a greater strength and a greater force of will to carry on. Heck, I tell people all the time that think they shouldn't be here anymore. I say, well, you're still here for a reason. So.
Exactly. Randy, you released your version of Cats in the Cradle in the summer of 2025, originally recorded by Harry Chapin, and was even featured in the Amazon Prime film celebrating the song's 50th anniversary, alongside other artists like Pat Benatar, Judy Collins, and even Billy Joel. What drew you to reinterpret such an iconic song, and what did it mean to you to be a part of that project?
Well, last year, I was contacted by my friend Rick, again, the guy who organized the 9/11 show. He's a film producer, and he said, I want to include you in this 50-year celebration of the song Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin. He said, we're basically assembling different artists and different people to get their insights on the song, and then play different versions of the song, and just we're going to turn out a film with it. And I said, well, who's going to be on this thing? He said, well, we've already done segments with Billy Joel and with Joan Collins and with Robert Lamb of Chicago, and a lot of Harry's contemporaries, and then a lot of newer artists. And he said, I wanted to include you. I said, well, nobody knows who I am. I said, are you trying to bring your ratings down? He goes, no. He says, I respect your songwriting and your creative input on things, but he said, I'd also like to get your personal insights on the song and how it affected you. I said, well, I actually play a version of this song when I go and I play music out somewhere. I said, people love this song. I said, this thing is never going to die. He said, well, play that on your segment. So I did. And then he played that segment for Harry Chapin's family, and they came back to me and said, he needs to make a record out of this. This is a good version of this song. So I did, and I released it on Father's Day. And the film actually got released in November of last year. It was on Apple TV, and then Amazon Prime picked it up. So a lot of streaming services have it. It's called Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle, the song that changed our lives. And it's done really well. From what I understand, it's gotten great reviews and gotten, tons and tons of streams. So it led to me doing a show this past December at Asbury Park. I don't know if you're familiar with the Stone Pony in Asbury Park.
Of course.
That's a famous old rock and roll club up there. And so they have an annual show for Harry Chapin's Why Hunger Foundation to raise money. It's called a Hungerthon, and they've been doing this ever since Harry was alive. So they invited me up to do that, and that was really, really a lot of fun. It was not too hard work at all because the band was great. I got to sing the Cradle with Harry's daughter, Jen. And I got to do Blue Suede Shoes with Gary Talent, my old buddy Gary Talent from the E Street Band.
Nice.
And there was a band that was on the show called the Dixie Dregs. I don't know if anybody remembers those guys or not. They were like a rock fusion band. They still play incredible. There was a girl on there. Her name is Yola. She's appeared in several films, and she's an amazing singer. And then, of course, the headliner was Little Steven Van Zandt. And Little Steven Van Zandt's band, the Disciples of Soul, was the house band. And then, of course, the surprise guest at the end was Bruce Springsteen. He came out. So it was a big show, and it raised a lot of money for the Why Hunger Foundation. So I'm pretty proud of that too. So, and they filmed that. So at some point, Rick is going to turn a film out of that too. So we'll see what happens.
Very cool. Now you said that the version of your version of Cats in the Cradle is available. You can see that movie on Amazon right now.
Yes, you can. Well, you can see it on Amazon Prime, Apple TV. So once again, it's called Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle, the song that changed our lives.
I always tell people that song used to touch my father all the time. Like, I think it resonates with a lot of dads because you work so hard, during your life to support your family, and you don't always have time to spend with your children. And then before you know it, you're old,
See, what you just said is exactly what this film was about. And a lot of people who talked about the song had those types of stories. They would tell about their dad, or they would say about themselves, or they may not even relate to it, but they relate to the story. The story is told and written and performed so well in that Harry Chapin record that they can't help but be drawn into it. So yeah, that was the idea of the song. What you just did, if you were going to ask me what the film is about, what you just said, that's what the film is about.
Yeah, I would imagine because, like I said, I think my dad kind of used to get a little upset when he heard the song. He liked the song, but it used to upset him because he worked like 3 jobs for almost 30 years, and there was 5, he had 5 children. So he really only got to see us like a little bit on Sundays, and that's it for a long time. And then before he knew it, we were grown men and women.
Well, that was Harry's life. And his wife actually was one who came up with the lyrics because he was gone a lot. Harry was one of these guys who he believed in giving back what he was doing. So he didn't just go and tour as a music artist to make money and sell records. He actually, about half of his performances every year were benefits. Anybody wanted him for a benefit, he would sign up for it and say, yeah. So he was gone probably more often than he should have been gone. And his wife wrote these lyrics, and she was telling him about it over the phone. He goes, "Hey, you're ripping my heart out here. You're ripping my heart out."
Yeah, but it's true, though. I mean, you get so caught up in life and work and stuff like that, and before you know it, your life has passed you by, and you're like, I'm old, and now my kids are doing the same thing that I'm doing, and we still don't have time for each other, you know, and it's kind of sad in a way, right?
It is, but it's just the way things are. You know,
it doesn't make them bad parents or anything like that. I mean, you do what you have to do to raise your family and survive and stuff. It's just, you know, it's just funny how life works. It's like before you know it, it's, you know, 30 years have flew by, and it's like, here we are, you know?
Well, it's setting an example and setting the bar for a younger person to go, okay, this is what responsibility looks like, you know, and if they have the desire to be a responsible person, then they probably take on a lot of those characteristics as well once they get to be of a certain age. So yeah, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's just a real thing is what it is.
Yeah. And every time I hear that song, I think of my father, but in a good way. You know, because I did appreciate all the times I did have with my father, because he did pass away, you know, in 2012. But, you know, every time I hear that song, I always think of my dad, but like I said, in a good way.
You know, who would put their arms around you and hug you for saying that would be Harry Chapin. He would give a big smile and a laugh for saying that. That is exactly where he wanted that song to land. He wanted people to think of someone that they loved.
And that's what it did for me. And, you know, sometimes when I think about it, it brings a tear to my eye because I miss him so much, you know? Yeah. But great song. And I think it's awesome that, you know, you're included in that movie for Harry Chapin. I think it's awesome.
Oh, here's really, when people ask me, you know, how is it that you did this and how is it that you did that, as if I had some sort of scheme or some sort of plan. I'm going to tell you the truth, James. Everything I ever planned never worked out, and everything I ever did fell in my lap. I never planned on it. So I just keep kind of like I just keep rolling along here and seeing what's next.
Things happen for a reason, I believe.
Well, for me, they do, because I couldn't make something happen if my life depended on it. So,
and I think the people that we meet along the way happen for a reason too.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any coincidences that are just random. I think everything is kind of lined up, and there's an end goal in mind. So
definitely. Yeah. Now, for the listeners discovering your music today, where can they find you online? Do you have a website, a streaming platform, or social media you want to share?
I've got most of that. I've got a website, which is randycmoore.com, randycmoore.com. I've got a couple of Facebook pages that really help me get things out there. There's one called Randy C. Moore Music. That's where people can kind of find out what my latest record is doing and maybe what records in the past have done. And then there's a thing called Friends of Randy C. Moore. That's more geared towards all of my live performances and things that are kind of happening, maybe not really on a daily basis, but just, you know, if anybody wants to see what I'm doing, they can do that. I've got, you know, a lot of these things are on YouTube. Everything that I've recorded and made into a distributed as a record is on iTunes, Amazon Music, Apple Music, and of course streaming on all the platforms. So you can just run down them. It's all on there. My distribution for my records is really good. So there's no reason for somebody not to be able to find a guy named Randy C. Moore.
Nice. Before we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to mention, like a new project or new music or any performances that we didn't get to cover today?
Well, at this point right now, I'm working so hard on Forget Me Not. We're getting airplay on the video in different video formats, which I'm really happy about. And the chart action that I'm getting is very satisfactory at this point. It's only been out since the first week of February. And in my view, it's gone really well on all the charts that it's performing on. So I really haven't, unfortunately, I really haven't thought beyond this. Because it's so kind of work intensive, you know, making sure that I get the song to places where it can get played and people can hear it. And I will tell you, I'm not really concerned about, you know, big number one chart action things. I just want people to hear the song. That's the only reason that I do this. I want people to hear it if it says something and I feel like it means something. Other than that, if you get an award or if you get a big, chart action, top 10, number one, what, that's all well and good. I'm very grateful for that. But seriously, it's the people who are listening to this and people who get it is all I'm in this for. Because the record business, I'll just tell anybody who is trying to get in the record business, it's very different than it was 30 or 40 years ago. It used to be 30 or 40 years ago, you could make a ton of money off of selling records and off of record royalties. It's just not that way anymore. Things have changed so much with streaming and with downloading and stuff like that. Records have gone back to what they were originally intended for, which they are a promotional item in order to get your music to the mass public. So if you go play a live show somewhere, they already are a little bit familiar with it, and they go, hey, I like that guy's song. I want to go hear him,
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where it's come back to.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, Randy, I want to thank you so much for doing this today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, James, it's awesome. And I hope I get to see you sometime.
Yeah, next time you got something new coming out, I'd love to have you back on the show and talk to you about it.
Yeah, wonderful. I'd be honored to do it. Actually, you got whatever it is, you got it. So,
well, I appreciate that, and I think you got something that going good there too, my friend.
Well, as long as things fall out of my mouth in the right direction.
Yeah, that's all you can do, man. I think your stuff resonates with a lot of people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you take care, my friend, and let's stay in touch, all right?
All right, James. Have a good day.
All right, you enjoy the rest of your day as well, all right? Bye-bye.
We'll see you.
Randy, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for taking the time to share your story and your music with us. It's always great to hear from artists whose careers have been shaped by years of dedication to songwriting, performing, and staying true to the roots of country music. From your early days making records as a teenager in Texas to performing on stages around the world and collaborating with legends like Carl Perkins, your journey is a great example of the passion and persistence that keeps this music alive. And of course, we appreciate you sharing the story behind your latest single, Forget Me Not, a song that carries a powerful message and continues your tradition of thoughtful songwriting. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check out Randy C. Moore's music on your favorite streaming platforms and follow him online to stay up to date with his latest releases and upcoming performances. And to close things out today, we're going to leave you with another song connected to Randy's songwriting legacy, a song he co-wrote with rockabilly legend Carl Perkins. This one's called Big Bertha. I'm James Michael Hollenstein, and this has been The Record Machine Show. Until next time, keep those records spinning.
Well, I'm sitting here wondering, where's my long, tall baby now? Yeah, I'm sitting here wondering, where's my long, tall baby now? 'Cause somebody came and stole her and left me on the bottom side of down. Yeah. I used to take her out on Saturday, and a swinging we would go. Yeah, I'd take her out on Saturday, and a swinging we would go. Now I would do most anything just to swing that gal once more. She always felt like a dream right here in my hands. Any cat who's played around with her would understand why I'm bluer than a hound dog, barking up a tree, crying, please, 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 Big Bertha, come on home to me. Well, I hope I never find him, the dude that took my gal away. Yeah, I hope I never find him, the dude that took my cat away. 'Cause if I do, I'm telling you, he'll have the devil to pay. Oh, yes, he will. She always felt like a dream right here in my hands. Any cat who played around with her would understand why I'm bluer than a hound dog, barking up a tree, crying, please, 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 Big Bertha, come on home to me. Oh, come on home to Daddy, Mama. I know she's just a golf club, but she always set me free. Yeah, I know she's just a golf club, but she always set me free. So if you see my Big Bertha, that gal to hit a few for me. Woo!
The Record Machine Show is a weekly radio podcast produced by Jimmy Hall Productions. All rights reserved. For distribution information or to add this podcast to your website, please visit our contact page at therecordmachineshow.com to submit your request. Thanks for listening. See you next time on The Record Machine Show.